Showdown at sunset. The small, dusty town of Red Rock was known for its quiet streets and peaceful folk. But that peace was shattered when a notorious outlaw, Hank the Snake Thompson, rode into town with his gang, looking to make trouble. The townspeople feared him, and for good reason. His reputation for violence and lawlessness stretched far across the frontier. Sheriff Sam Turner, a man of few words but strong principles, watched from his office as the Snake and his men dismounted their horses in front of the saloon. The sheriff knew this day would come. He had been preparing for it ever since Hank had robbed the stagecoach outside of town the year before. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the dirt streets, the tension in the air grew thick. The townsfolk hurriedly locked their doors and peered out from behind curtains, knowing that a confrontation was inevitable. Sheriff Sam stepped out of his office, his boots crunching on the dry earth. He adjusted his hat and made his way toward the saloon, his hand resting on the worn handle of his Colt revolver. Hank noticed the sheriff approaching and smirked, tipping his hat back as he leaned against the saloon's post. "Well, if it ain't Sheriff Turner, come to give me a proper welcome?" Hank drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "You're not welcome here, Hank," the sheriff replied calmly. "This town's had enough of your kind." Hank chuckled, his gang laughing along with him. "I don't think you're in any position to make demands, Sheriff," he sneered, his hand inching toward his holster. The street was silent, save for the distant howl of the wind. The townspeople held their breath, waiting for the inevitable. The sheriff and Hank stood facing each other, the golden light of the setting sun glinting off their weapons. In the blink of an eye, Hank went for his gun, but Sheriff Sam was faster. A single shot rang out, echoing through the empty street. Hank stumbled backward, clutching his chest before collapsing to the ground, his pistol falling from his hand. The sheriff stood motionless, his smoking gun still pointed at where Hank had stood. The outlaws' gang, seeing their leader down, quickly mounted their horses and fled, not daring to challenge the sheriff further. The townsfolk slowly emerged from their homes, gathering around the sheriff as he holstered his weapon. He gave them a nod, then turned and walked back toward his office without a word. The threat was gone, but the weight of what he had done hung heavy on his shoulders. Red Rock was quiet once again, but the memory of that day would linger for years. The sheriff had protected his town, but he knew that the frontier was a place where peace was always fragile, and men like Hank were never far behind. Life lesson: standing up for what's right often requires courage and resolve, especially in the face of danger. True leadership means making tough decisions, even when the burden is heavy. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's necessary to protect those who depend on you. English lesson: vocabulary focus. Outlaw: a person who has broken the law and is hiding or running from authorities. Showdown: a final confrontation or decisive encounter, especially one that is anticipated and dramatic. Holster: a holder for carrying a handgun, typically worn on a belt or under the arm.